Scott Randall in here? Okay, because it said at the bottom, global business management. So I couldn't really place it, but I'm glad you're also joining us. Maybe hoping we'll have a couple of more because a lot more people signed up. But in the meanwhile, let me just welcome all of you. And this is quite informal in terms of how we will run this. And if in the meanwhile somebody has a comment or a question while we are waiting on a couple of more, we will get started afterwards. Go ahead. Anybody has any comment or question? No comments or question. Okay, then we will get started from Avi. So we will go back to that slide. Yes, yeah, that's a good slide to start with. Okay, just a little bit of introduction about myself. My name is Radha Krishnan. Everybody calls me Radha, and I am attached to the university's UH Energy Initiative, and I also teach full-time at the Bauer College of Business. And prior to joining the university about 12 years ago, I had worked for Shell for about 36 years. And of course, when you're around for that long, you work in different roles. I would also like to take this opportunity to introduce two other people. I'd like to introduce Amy Mifflin, a partner in crime with me. We both together teach with that. I did not, know that Scott Randalls would be in, but to welcome Scott. Scott will also be, he's also a person who teaches along with the two of us. So the three of us teach this course. Amy, you want to say a few words? You're mute.
Yeah. Yes, I was just about to say I'm on mute. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this informational session. And of course, if you have any questions post our session, don't be bashful about reaching out to any of us to get those answered. I'm very excited to be here. This is our third cohort group that we're pulling together, and it's quite interesting, lots of fun, lots of really great work, outcomes. And most of all, I think it helps with networking and just kind of seeing things from a more broader scope and all the things that are going on out there in at least these three topical areas in ESG. So we look forward to hopefully seeing you in the spring class.
I would also request Scott to say a few words. He also works with us, and then we all three teach this course together. Go ahead, Scott. You are muted. Scott is muted. How do we unmute him? Kyle, can you unmute Scott? Nope, we are not able to. Let me just to see quickly. Scott Randall.
All right, I think I got the message that it's unmuted. Great.
Okay, very good.
Great to be here. And as Radha said, and Amy, we developed this program together. My particular area is risk. One thing I think we want to stress is that ESG is not just sustainability revisited. It's not corporate social responsibility 2.0. It really is an entirely new perspective on these issues, a broadening as well as a deepening. And the most important thing is real accountability and accountability for targets. So we're going to be dealing with how it is that you deal with I specifically will be talking about the uncertainty around achievement of targets in these different areas, which is a relatively new area of practice. I think you'll find it quite challenging and interesting through our case approach that we use.
Thank you, Scott. What Scott and Amy did not say is they both have years of experience in their respective fields. Amy has been in this business of ESG for quite a long time. I will not say how many years, because I don't want you to be guessing her age. She started young when she was 6 years old in this business. So with that, they bring in enormous amount of experience. How did we get into this area? Obviously, in industry, this is becoming a very hot topic, and we'll talk a little bit more about it. So we used to have, we have a consortium, which is a consortium for energy corporate social responsibility. That's how we started about 2.5 years ago. And we had an advisory group on that one. Amy is on the advisory group, and so are other people, representatives from Shell, Occidental Petroleum, independent consultant. So we had different people bringing in different perspectives. Every one of them had been quite immersed in this area. So when we tried to find out what is it that we could be doing in this area, this is about 2.5 years ago, they felt that there is no formal education that is offered. Every one of these got into the job and learned the ropes by themselves, just by sheer practice. So having some kind of an educational one would be valuable. And that led us to starting this program. This is the third time that we are offering this series of badges. And the whole thing is structured in terms of badges. Each badge is about 15 hours, 6 lectures, 2.5 hours each, amounting to a total of 15 hours. And 3 such badges get you a certificate. And so when we started thinking about this, how should we be doing this? It became very clear that there are people doing it. What they are struggling with is the how-to part of it. Of course, you give them a little bit about what it is, what is ESG, and what are the different aspects of it, but a lot more about skills on if I went back to my job, how would I get started? So this was a highly skill-based area that we wanted the courses to be in skill development. And in order to really do that, all these lectures are run around cases. Scott mentioned a little bit about that. We have an oil and gas company, and then we look at how would you go about preparing their ESG roadmap. And then we also talk about other aspects on stakeholder management and then on risk management. Each one of them is centered around a case. So the 3 badges, the first one is get you an overview. What is the roadmap? How can you think about it for your own company? One of the most important aspects in these is understanding your stakeholder needs and how do you manage and work with them. And stakeholders in a broad sense, both external as well as internal, not only the community, but also your investors. Everybody is part of the stakeholder management. There we actually use a case that is built around a refinery in Port Arthur, and where many of the situations were real. So we've taken that, written up as a case, and so students get to participate in it in a much more interactive way. Divide the class into 2 teams. One is on the management side, the other is on the stakeholders. So you have an interaction where we guide it to be quite real as much as possible. So you learn about the challenges of trying to understand. The last badge is on risk management. And there we use a case of the same oil company trying to enter into a new country, the country of Gabon. So what are the kinds of challenges that when you go into a new territory? and not only political, and the business risks, but we focus much more on the social risks. Okay, so that is how we have structured the whole course, and it is to taking this course, should be able to get people ready to start preparing ESG plans. So if you are already in the business where you have, you're assigned a role in the ESG area, developing plans or interacting with others about it, then this would be a very good one. And when we look at the kind of students who have come in the past, uh, many of them, they said, I'm going to be transferred. I'd like to get into this. Or somebody says, I have a group wherein we manage the ESG for the company, and I need to figure out how to get going. This is a new assignment for me. So in every one of them, it has been helpful. As we said, these badges are about 15 hours, and we try to deliver them over 6 lectures, which is 3 weeks. It should have been 3 weeks. So each week we meet twice, 2.5 hours each. And by the time you finish 3 weeks, you are done with one badge. Then we take a week break and then come back and do it again. And then for the second badge and then the third badge. People sometimes may just feel you can take one badge, but we are asking people, if you want to take all 3, that will be helpful because you walk through the whole thing. And next slide, please. So this is what the schedule is. And people can take one badge or multiple badges. So we start in about the 14th of February, and we will be done by the end of April with all the 3 badges. If somebody just decides to take only 1 or 2 of the badges, that is equally okay. But those who want to take all 3 get a good flavor for the entire ESG process. What I would like to do is we try to keep that portion of it brief, because we would like to hear from you any questions that you have. Before I open it up, let me ask Amy whether she has any comments to add to this, and so Scott, any comments to add?
Yeah, I think you did a great job, Dr. Radha. I'm just putting in the chat room that, there's the variety of participants that join us come for a variety of different reasons, right? They could be the department leaders. They could have a lot of different responsibilities that intersect with ESG, and looking for that foundation that they can actually kind of think and build their key understandings and how this may mature for them inside their organization, or how they may develop a strategy around it for their own internal purposes that feed into the company's external business strategy. So lots of variation in there as to why people come to join this. I think the takeaway that by the time you're at the end of the journey is just the capability of thinking about this in very broad, more holistic context, much to what Scott was saying earlier, because things are rapidly evolving and moving. So we do talk about emerging issues in this space, new and important things that come up. So it's not like you would typically think of a structured course where it's going to go through 1, 2, 3, and you walk out and do that. Everything that's going on around us, even in current events, comes into this classroom for our discussion purposes, for how does this connect, and so on and so forth. We also like to integrate guest speakers who are subject matter experts on a very specific issue. Last class in the last season, we had a professional come in that talked about TCFD, and so it could be human rights, it could be a whole variety of things. We've had someone talk about the importance of understanding how governance plays a huge role. So again, there's lots of different variations that we will put into the syllabus as we go through this. So hopefully that helps entice you a little bit more to come join us in the conversation. Scott, anything you want to add?
I'd like to say, as kind of a counterpart to what Amy said, the course does provide this broad perspective and this view, and it actually ends up, as Radha mentioned, in a very tactical way, in that we really focus on tools and techniques that you can take away and begin to apply, but not in isolation, but within the context of this broader view that you get early on in the program. So I think it's a really good mix of the broad perspective, strategic view with a very tactical takeaway of tools and techniques in risk.
Any questions that somebody has?
I've
Go
got a
ahead,
question.
Brian. Go ahead.
All right. Actually, I have two questions. Thanks. So the first one is, if circumstances arise where somebody ends up having to miss one of the Monday or Thursday classes, is there a way somehow of making that up, either through recorded sessions? And then the other question is I noticed that it said that there would be some homeworks and quizzes, exam, things like that. Are the assignments, are they usually individual, or are they team based? And if they are team based, like if you were to miss a class, how has it been handled in the past to be able to make that up with team members?
Let me go ahead and then try answering them. The very first one that you asked about if people miss classes, we fully recognize that most of the people who are joining these classes have a regular full-time job. And so they're joining in the evenings. That's why we have kept it at 4:30 in the evening to 7. Okay, so that means 2.5 hours. So hopefully it gets into that. And there are occasionally times when people are not able to make it, just like you mentioned. And so all these are recorded, and those recordings are available that you can watch. Even if you have not missed the class, you want to go back and then listen to something a second time, more than happy to do that. All these are made available. As regards homework, it is structured in such a way that you learn something, and there is only so much time that we can do in the class, 2.5 hours. And so we just assign some pre-reading materials, so that when you come into the class, you already have some understanding of the subject. We would like to use the class a lot more interactive, so that you ask questions that makes it much more easy for you to absorb, as opposed to straight lecturing all the time, okay? That you can listen to on the video if you wanted to. So it is structured around that. So there is some pre-read that people do. The second thing we also have in this course, if we just gave lectures or some pre-read, it becomes very difficult for a person when he gets onto their own desk and then say, now let me get started. What do I do first? What do I do next? How do I do this? So that aspect of it, we just to try to incorporate into the class. So whatever we teach, as we walk through, you are already doing some work trying to make it happen. As an example, when we go through in the first one, which has to do with the developing a framework for yourself, we give an oil and gas company before you come to the class, you just to read about them. Not a very onerous reading, probably about 5 or 6 pages. You read through that, it gives you what the company does and so on. Then as we go through, we ask you to say what aspects are important, what things would you focus on, how would you come to, so that at the end, you have sort of like a sketch of an ESG plan that you would like to do. The idea of doing that is you may have questions. Should I include this or should I not include this? Under what circumstances would I do that? That kind of questioning in class helps you to sharpen your understanding of what you have to do. So the homework is when you finally come, just to share your plan so that we can give you a critique of it and then give it back to you. Okay, so it helps you, very helpful to you. In terms of teamwork, in the first batch, there is not that much of teamwork. The second badge is all a lot more you are interacting as either management or as a member of the community. Everybody is assigned a clear role. So community, some people will get together and how should we be talking about what is important for us. So there may be a certain, an hour or so that you set up with your team, and then you can get together and then you come in a lot more prepared. So there is a little bit of lecture on how you think about stakeholders and so on. But then when it comes to, you're going to be negotiating, hard-nosed negotiating. So split the class into two. And then in the area of the community, we split them into three small teams so that there are only 2 people in each or 3 people in each. And same thing in management. Now you go ahead head on and try to first, there are 3-4 sessions. Each one has a clear objective. So by the time you come back, you have a plan from management side that is bought into by the community people in terms of how you go forward. So there it is highly interactive in class, but you need to prepare a little bit, either among yourselves. So sometimes people say, let's meet half an hour before class and then do it. However, students want to do it. Similar structure when it comes to the risk. So teams work in small groups, and then they identify an area of risk, and then how are you going to understand, how are you going to mitigate, how you develop your plans, all of that they do in small groups and then come and then share. So it is never meant to be extremely onerous, like you spend 15 hours and so you're going to spend another 15 to 20 hours on your own. That is not the way it works. It's a lot less, but there is clearly some amount of pre-reading that you do so that you get a lot more knowledgeable. Hope I answered your question.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah. Anybody else? So while people are thinking, let me just add one more based on what Brian had asked. Amy had mentioned the fact that many times the topic you are talking about is just emerging. There is no one answer. There are several thoughts on it. So you will hear how different people practice it. So we could get somebody from an oil company, how they practice it, somebody from a pipeline company, and somebody who is from independent consultant like Amy, who looks at several different companies, not necessarily in the energy business. So what are things that are evolving? We would also occasionally bring in experts who really tell you what's going on in Washington in this area. Is this all where just the companies get and then worry about it? Or are there other people, getting their oars into the water? Like what kind of regulation are likely to come? So we just bring those kinds of perspectives, in addition to all of that. So you will have several people come in and they are more than happy. They are all, experts in their own areas. Now I'll pause for a second, see if anybody has any questions. I know whenever I teach class, I also said, you ask a question and then there is no feedback. So I just said, boy, I must be absolutely crystal clear to everybody, or it is one big piece of mud. And so people said, we don't want to sort through this, one or the other. So with that, let me ask Amy if she wants to add anything, any comments, or Scott, just to even provide a little bit more details.
Yeah, I think that in joining in, I mentioned in my opening comments a little bit about networking. And one of the things that I can say throughout my entire career of doing this, and I worked in the energy sector for 30 years. So there you go, Dr. Radha, with my people kind of seeing where my age spectrum falls out. But at the same time, networking and collaborating with your peers, even competitors in this space, has always been a very important part of what we do, especially those of you that are in oil and gas, because as you know very well, we can all end up in similar places and similar basins. And in this external looking, external facing kind of space, it's incredibly important that we work together and that we're working toward doing many of the things in a collaborative fashion, you know, using best practices, using each other to reach out to when our companies are pressuring us to, you know, increase the standard or figure out a new way of working on something. And just having that networking system is so incredibly important outside of your normal space. And I think what I have enjoyed watching over the last two groups that did this, because relationships get formed and we encourage it. We encourage, you know, the connections, the offline conversations that happen because we're willing to give our email addresses. And I've had many of coaching and mentoring sessions online with folks, or someone saying, oh my gosh, I'm in the middle of something, I can't figure it out. Would you mind getting on a call with me? It's just to walk through it. So I think there's even an added benefit to participating here too, you know, becoming a part of the University of Houston's culture. Everyone's so willing to be helpful. It's been great to have Scott join us in last semester's class. He was a great addition, especially from the risk management knowledge sector. And I think that those things are just that's sort of the intangible thing that that's hard for us to encapsulate other than just kind of, you know, talking about what the experiences have been. So that's another way to really kind of expand your networking system is through here too. So,
You know, if I can add to what Amy said about networking is quite helpful, whatever field you might be in, because you understand what else is going on in other companies and so on. It is especially quite critical in this area of ESG because the whole knowledge base is still developing. And different people look at it from different angles and then practice that to understanding how somebody else tackled what you had and what is it that they are working, but you don't see it in your company, but you know it's around the corner. And it is going to, before it hits you between the eyes, you already have a head start. You probably have a person that you can talk to. In fact, the members in this CECSR that we had were all like Amy, Ravi from Oxy, Chris from Shell, and Murray from Schlumberger. You know, these are all people who are practicing. And so it becomes very quick. And they have a big network. So everybody just say, hey, this is what I'm seeing. Have anybody done anything in this area? And pretty soon your learning curve moves up. By being in this class, you have the advantage of you have your own network. We try to get all these people who have taken this class, stay together and connect up with each other. But we also connect you up with people in the industry so that your questions and others through Amy or Ravi or Chris or Murray, we can get you some answers and get you in the right direction so that you are not handicapped. All right. So let us see if you have, any other questions to learn more about ESG. Okay, so we have put down, a little bit more in terms of the web page that you can, and obviously we would really very much like to have you in the class, and we already have certain people who have registered. So if you had other questions, but you did not want to ask here because they may be personal in nature or otherwise, you can always give me a call. And I will put down my cell number in here, and you can call me on that one anytime. We'll be happy to answer, and that way it becomes easier, whether it is about joining the class, about something else. Two other things that I would like to mention. This area is emerging. There are lots of things that are coming up. I don't know what motivated you to be thinking about this, but this is becoming quite critical. Just like you have financial reporting, this is non-financial reporting. So the whole area of how do you report? And secondly, how people use that report. Investors are constantly asking, what is your performance in ESG? They feel that there is a certain amount of risk if you did not address this properly. And initially, it started out in a small way, but now Amy can tell you they are all getting pretty smart about this, especially the investors, and they ask very sharp questions. So having some understanding, being able to address that before it becomes any other issue, that motivates a lot of companies to be seriously looking at this. So that could be one of the reasons why you have. And in that sense, we try to help you out with how to, but also bring you what are the new things that are happening. We don't have it in this series of badges, but we have them like on human rights, diversity, equity, and inclusiveness. And then when you even really look at emissions, CO2 emissions, there are scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. Scope 3, everybody says, is going to be much bigger than scope 1 and scope 2, but there is not clear clarity in terms of how you look at it and how you address it. So we are developing material on that. So we are thinking about down the road, a couple of courses on some of these emerging topics. Okay. So now I will see if anybody else has got any questions. I know Amy had to leave because she had another engagement right after that. In fact, it started at 2. So her colleagues are covering for her so that she could be with us till at least 2:30. Any other question? Maybe even if you did not have a direct question, if you are happy to share, what made you really, come in and want to listen to this? We are always keen to understand what motivates people to come to these, these kind of topics, especially ESG. That's where my interests are. Anybody wants to talk about that? That's equally okay.
Sure, I'll give a quick rundown. So I spent 20 years as a geoscientist in upstream oil and gas, various roles. And in April of 2020, when prices went negative, by the end of the week, I was out of a job along with countless other people. And once I got over the shock and panic, decided that to treat it as a mid-career sabbatical. And recently started the MBA program at University of Houston and just finished up in December. And just got offered and accepted a job with ERM.
Very good.
And thank you. With working with their basically the low carbon economy transition. So I'll be working as a principal consultant with them, and part of the overall job description is being involved in ESG, and it's something that I'm interested in. And so I just wanted to get an idea of what the course was going to be covering. I'll be starting that job within a few weeks here, and so I just wanted to be able to approach my new manager and let him know about this this program and see whether or not it's something that they would be interested in me participating in.
I don't know whether your job has any relationship with Trey Schaefer, and Trey is highly supportive of our program. We have brought him in a couple of times. We work together on SPE committees and so on. So Trey, if you run into him, say hello. And he supports and he's very much involved in ESG.
Okay. You said his name is Trey Schaefer?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't, I met a few people during my interview process, and I expect to be, meeting many more in the coming weeks and months. So I don't know, with being everything being virtual right now, it
Yes.
kind of limits that a little bit, but I'll keep an eye out for that name.
Very good. Anybody else would like to make a statement? But Brian, I hope, if you take the course, you will not be disappointed. We'll certainly give you a good understanding of, what this area involves. Hi, Mary.
Hi, how are you?
I'm just
I thought I
fine.
would also make a statement.
Yeah, please
I thought
do.
I would also just let you know why I was interested in that. I'm a retired geologist. I have 45 years in the oil business, and I think that the future is going to be carbon capture and sequestration. So I've gone back to school at University of Houston to get a PhD in geology of carbon sequestration.
Very good.
And so I'm actually in the geology department, but they don't really have a program that is specifically designed for carbon capture and sequestration. And I've got lots of years in Midland. I spent probably 25 years working in the Permian Basin, 25 years of the 45 working in the Permian Basin. And I really feel like all of these super basins, all of these petroleum super basins need to be turned into giant recycling projects, putting the carbon dioxide back in the ground. And that's going to be and have a lot of ESG associated with actually getting that done. But I really feel like that the oil business is going to, as soon as they can start making money by putting CO2 back in the ground, and I think they're going to have government help or tax, increase in the 45Q tax credits in order to actually get that done. But I'd like to be able to participate in the conversation that actually makes carbon capture and sequestration economic. And I think that the ESG is going to have a lot to do with that. But anyway, just wanted to make that comment, say hello to everyone.
By any chance, as part of your work, have you run into Christine Economides?
Yeah, I had lunch with her before COVID.
I'm glad you did, because she is very heavily involved in exactly what you're saying, developing lots of models. So if you had worked on your PhD, you would be quite involved. I think one of the other things that I would really like to say is, we have educational programs even in sustainable energy development, and but we also have a lot of research projects going on in carbon sequestration as part of CCME, which was on the chat room. Kyle was kind enough to put you a link so that you can take a look at that.
One other thing I would mention, sorry, Alan Rossiter, I'm work with Radha in UH Energy. We also do have a CCUS program that we ran it once last year, CCUS Executive Education Program, which covers a lot of the issues you talked about, very much focused on the CCUS side of things. We don't have the next iteration of that program scheduled yet, but I expect it will come up again later this year. So added to the ESG aspects that you're looking at here, it's more specific to CCUS.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, UH Energy is quite involved in this energy transition, as well as in utilization of the CO2 or methane, as the case may be, any of the greenhouse gases. Lots of work is going on. So that also you can read about on our website. So with that, let me ask, there are, several others. Anybody else would like to say why, what is their interest in ESG and how did they, want to get involved?
This is Don McConnell from Hong Kong. My expertise is technical, and I'm involved on the technical side with things involving transition, sustainability, doing sustainability. But I think a lot of this is going to come down to effective policy as well as stakeholder pressure and understanding them and working with them. So that's outside of my normal area of expertise, and so I thought it would be useful to have a better broad understanding of that.
Very good, Don. I know we had a little bit of time before the session started. At the end of the day, ESG is a way to measure and then understand how much you are, what your performance is in different areas, environment, social, and in governance. But just measurement doesn't cut it. You have to think about what are you going to do about it. And that's where the entire corporation is involved, and both the technical and non-technical people in terms of how do we, reduce it, what kind of practices we can put in. You also think about whether government can provide some incentives. So in that sense, it will soon become everybody's business very shortly. Let me hear from anybody else. Thanks, Don. Anybody else?
I'm Allison Barker, and I was just going to share that I come to this from the electric utility corporate communications world, and will be in charge of my company's ESG report from the communications perspective, working in collaboration with the sustainability team and the environmental stewardship team.
Very good. Thanks for sharing that, Allison. All I can just say is I do not know where your current understanding of ESG is. If it is something new for you, the course is certainly, quite helpful in terms of at least providing a way to get started, where to start, what are the things that you want to be working on, and so on. If you are already involved, then this may be also providing you with what is new coming around. And so there may be a lot of interest for you in how to be ahead of the curve. So in either case, kindly take a look at it. If you needed to talk much further about this, please feel free to give me a call. I put down my number. I'll be happy to spend quiet time with you.
Thank you. So I definitely am not new to corporate communications. I've been around that for quite some time, but and have done some sustainability support, but the ESG part of it is a relatively new role.
Yeah. So I think we can provide. We definitely do provide things. In even as a simple, if you have a plan, how do you actually make the corporation follow that? Those kinds of things we touch upon. How do you train other people so that it becomes everybody's business? So that's always the challenge. It is not belongs to the ESG department. It belongs to many people. Just like safety is not just part of the safety department. Safety department just provides the guidelines. Everybody else has to practice it. So we touch on that quite a bit. Anybody else? I'm glad, Allison, you shared your story, and hope we will see you in class.
Good afternoon. This is Amanda Miller. Sorry, Allison. My background is somewhat similar to Allison's. I am in corporate communications for a natural resources company whose legacy is in coal. So we still have coal mining as well as aggregate mining, as well as a mitigation business. So we have definitely diversified. I am a former lobbyist for an aggregates company in the US and have transitioned to a communications role, especially where it comes in to the sustainability and the ESG. I led a sustainability initiative about 5 years ago with my previous employer, But now with the rate of new information coming at us with ESG, the multiple frameworks, the coalition of SASB and these other organizations and ISSB and things like that, we are struggling to decipher the alphabet soup, so to speak. And the further integration of ESG principles into what we do is our next step.
Once again, I don't want to sound like I'm repeating it, but I'd still like to say that, Amanda, we have had in the past students who were with a communication background and, quite a different backgrounds as well. But this is what we go through. You get a better understanding of what is involved in ESG. And as such, when you are communicating, if that is still one of your remits, then it helps to communicate in the right way. Because these are things in the past people have had. You may make a statement, you can always go back and then take it and then reword it because ESG was evolving. But it's coming to a point where I think a word spoken is going to be out there. So being thoughtful about what you measure and how do you maintain that, all of those lead to your strategy in the ESG area. And I hope we definitely covered that.
Thank you. Completely agree.
Yep. Anybody else? Well, we thank you very, very much for taking the time to come to this information session. And hopefully we have answered some of your questions. There are more that you can get in the website. But as I said, if you really want to have specific questions addressed, please feel free. You can always call me on my cell phone. If I didn't answer it, please leave a message, because on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm practically all day in class, teaching in the business school. But Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I am quite open. That's when I get all my other work done. So please feel free to give me a call and I'll be happy to answer your questions, or at least get you answers from other friends of mine. Okay, with that, we thank you all very much, and thank Scott and Alan for coming in, and everyone else. All the names that I see, Allison, Kelly, Brian, Amanda, Betty, Aiken, Sophia. Thank you all very much. Have a wonderful weekend and stay safe.